Most of the time when I do a weathering pass or a wash to kind of dirty up a prop, I use acrylic paints, but for mechanical looking pieces like this, sometimes I prefer to use oil-based paints. Today, I'm going to show you how I do that. This is my Ray Blaster prop from The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi now. Did a video on this build a while back and I made a bunch, I gave a bunch away, and at some point I did not have one for myself. So I finally finished one up and I got to the point where I wanted to weather it. I was gonna do something a little bit different with this one. So instead of just doing a wash with acrylic paints like I normally do on most props, I'm gonna use these water mixable oil paints, and there's a reason for that. Oil paints have a very different consistency to your acrylic paints. These have, as the name would imply, oil in them, and they're greasy and kind of smeary, and they just have different characteristics, and it changes how they look when they are finally dry on your prop, but they also changes how you apply them, which means you can get away with some very different looks. Specifically anything that should look mechanical that you want to have kind of greasy. While they are oil paints technically, being that they are water mixable means that you can actually get a little bit of water and thin them a bit. Now I usually don't do that. I usually use them straight up as is, which means you could probably use normal oil paints like so. But I grabbed a bunch of these a while back and I've still been working through them and they work awesome, so I stick with them. For this one here, I'm just gonna go with a little bit of black, a little bit of brown. I have a burnt sienna in there if I want it to look rusty, but Ray's Blaster is not rusty, so we're just gonna dirty it up a little bit. I just take a little bit of the paint, kind of mix the brown and the black together a bit, not really well. I want it to be a bit varied, and then I smear it all over my prop. But first, I want to make sure that my paint job is nice and protected. The paints for this were all clad lacquers, and in the past I have goofed up. Turns out the straight up lacquers without a clear coat on them will be stripped up immediately by this oil paint. That was a really sad day when I figured that out. So this particular paint job has been clear coated with All Clad's Aqua Gloss, and I've let it dry for a couple days now just to be sure. And now I should be free to dirty it up. You apply it much in the same way you would apply an acrylic wash. You just kind of pick up some of your paint and drive it down into the crevices of your prop. You'll notice it doesn't really flow the way that a water-based paint does. It's kind of more sticky and just stays put, which is kind of nice. The other thing, and the main thing about these paints, is that they take forever to dry, which is great. Well, it's kind of great. If you need it tomorrow, then you're out of luck. This is gonna take a week or two to dry completely. But when you're applying it, you have all kinds of time to work. So you lay it down, this stuff is still wet, and it will stay wet for days. So I can come in with a dry paper towel here and just wipe away the excess. Now what I love about these paints is that you can kind of smear them a bit and get a little bit more of a gradient on the finish. If you buff the high spots, it should take most of it off and then leaving a little bit of grime down in the low spots. Here, I'll show you that again. So I'll grab some more paint here and then I'm just gonna smear it all over this spot in here. Again, I could leave that there for an hour and come back and still be able to work with it. That's how slow this stuff dries. So now when I wipe it off, you can see that I have a bit of control over how it looks, how much ends up driven down in there. You could even go in with like a Q-tip and work with it a little bit. Get a little bit more of a gradient on the transition between where there's all the grime and where you want it to be clean. So you can do a little bit more subtle work this way, and it especially looks really great on something that's supposed to look like metal, like this blaster. It also has that kind of shiny grease finish on there that you want from something to look other than just a flat black or brown paint. I really enjoy working with these paints too. It's just nice and calm, and you don't have to rush with it because it takes so long to dry. And you can do a lot more work with the paintbrush before you do your wiping to get the paint where you want it to go. So I can cover more of the area around that screw there and then gently take away what I want and almost buff it until there's just a little bit left over around that screw. There is one side, pretty fairly gunked up, looking good compared to this side over here. Again, this is a little more of a subtle approach to dirtying up your prop, but sometimes that's exactly what it calls for. Now the handle on this prop is black, so if I smear in some black paint, it would be kind of hard to see. I like to mix it up a little bit. I can go with that brown, but that's pretty dark too. I also have this yellow ochre paint, so I'll mix that in with a little bit of the brown to get kind of a lighter color. So that lighter brown color can go in to the grips here and get a little bit more contrast. Again, of course, just wipe it off like so. And if that's too much, like if that's just too yellow, I could go back in with some black paint to darken it up a little bit, or grab a Q-tip and try and clean more of that out. This really does feel a lot more like I'm cleaning a dirty, greasy gun than I'm weathering it. And I can just repeat that over the whole handle here. Get it all dirtied up. The great news, since I have so much time, I can just paint the whole thing and then come back later and wipe it down. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit of a Bob Ross vibe from this video, and I'm digging it. There we go. We've got a dirty, muddy, grimy, greasy looking grip there, and then it's super easy to just wipe it down and get a really nice looking grip. And I can buff that more and more to get a cleaner look. Just like before, going with my Q-tip, maybe clean it off a little bit more. And that gives me that contrast that I really want to get out of a dirty grip. So there it is, all dirty up, looking great. On the other side, that's what it looked like, all clean. Just some crusty polishing compound in there. No good. Clean, dirty.
Winner, loser.
And that's about it. Just repeat over the entire prop. There's nothing too complicated about this particular material or technique. It's a lot of fun. So there it is, all nice and grimed up. And once again, wiping it off with a paper towel. So that's looking pretty great there. I'm just gonna have to repeat that over the whole gun here and then wait about, I don't know, 6 or 8 months for it to dry. You're probably gonna ask, what should I do to clear coat this, to protect this? And I would not clear coat it. This prop has already been clear coated. The finish is not gonna come off. The weathering is down in the crevices, so you're probably not going to wear it off with your hands or anything. And also, it's literally will take a week or two before it's going to dry anyway, so clear coating it anytime before then would just be folly. So I say don't clear coat it. Brush it on, wipe it off, give it some good time to dry, and you'll have yourself a really nice looking weathered mechanical prop. So here we go with the weathered side, all dirtied up and looking pretty fantastic. We'll compare that to the totally clean side, which again doesn't look terrible, but that subtle grime that's down in all the crevices from that oil paint really does kind of help sell this prop. So you can see here on the part that has the all-clad paint on it, that spot that's black is a spot where I missed spraying on the clear coat, and the oil paints, when I wiped them, stripped it all the way down to the black paint. If I was super worried about this, I would repaint that, but in this case, it's the part that I'm gonna have in my hand, or if it's up on a wall. You're not gonna see it, so I won't fix it on this one, but I just wanted to showcase what will happen if you don't clear coat this stuff well before using these type of paints. Everything else looks good though. And that's how I like to weather with my oil paints, specifically these water mixable oil paints. I recommend, if you want to get into this, picking up at least like the brown and the black here. They're really awesome. Of course, we'll have links down in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. And if you have any questions about these materials or any of the techniques I showed in this video, let me know down in the comments and I will be happy to get back to you. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you like these painting and finishing videos, not only did I do an acrylic wash video recently, again on a different space gun, but I also have a whole playlist full of painting and finishing techniques. So go ahead and dive right in, and hopefully you'll learn something that helps you out on your next prop and costume project. And if you did learn something and you have a cool project or prop to show, then hit me up on Twitter. I'm @ChinBeard, and I love seeing the projects that you're working on. That's all I have for you today. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me in the shop today, and I'll see you in the next build.